So good afternoon. My name is Tina Jordan, and I'm the Vice President of Membership for FCA International. And I'm excited to welcome you to today's Women in FCA panel. Women in FCA hold several of these events throughout the year, including our annual Women's Appreciation event held at West in San Diego each February. We also hold Women in Cyber Leadership panels at many of our FCA International and chapter events. Our calendar year 2022 panels will be held next April at FCA International's TechNet Indo-Pacific in Hawaii, TechNet Cyber, again here in Baltimore, later that month in April. In August, we'll hold a Women in Cyber panel at TechNet Augusta in Georgia. And then in November, we hold another Women in FCA or Women in Cyber panel back at Techno Indo-Pacific. So you're going to get 2 Women in FCA panels at Techno Indo-Pacific during 2022.
No extra charge.
Exactly. You get a twofer because of it being pushed from this November to April. So we look forward to seeing you at those. And please, when you attend those events, please look for the Women in FCA Cyber panels. All of the Women in FCA events, panels, and receptions are made possible by a joint sponsorship between Walker & Associates and the Sienna Corporation. We are so pleased that they sponsor Women in FCA because, quite frankly, we couldn't do these things without their sponsorship, so we thank them. Today with us, we have Lisa Smiley and Tom McLaughlin from Walker & Associates, USTC, and Chris Ransbottom from Sienna Corporation. All of the women's panels are followed by a Meet the Panelists reception. Today we're happy to invite you to the reception, which takes place at 4 p.m. in the Sharp Street lobby on the 3rd floor of the Convention Center. So when you go to the 3rd floor, you'll see signage for the women's reception. You'll also see signage for the Sharp Street lobby as part of the Convention Center. You'll see signs, so make sure you make your way to the Sharp Street lobby. You don't have to be a woman to attend that panel. You just have to be somebody who wants to show up, have some great conversation, get some great drinks and appetizers, and meet all the panelists and network. So I think Susan Emmert right here and Gretchen Gunning and Nancy right here, if they could raise their hand, they have the all-important drink tickets. So before you leave here, make sure you see them to get one of the drink tickets for the reception, okay? This panel has been approved for continuing education credits. However, you do have to stay the full hour to receive the credit. And you have to get your badge scanned. And if you look at the back, there's a table back there with 2 iPads on it, right in the back of the theater. And those iPads are the scanners and you get your badge scanned for the continuing education. They don't open until 5 minutes until 3, so we want you to stay the full hour. And the things automatically, the scanners automatically close at 3:15. So we do want you to enjoy a conversation afterwards, but if you want to get your badge scanned, you need to have it scanned by 3:15 because we cannot reopen the scanners once they've closed at 3:15. So with those announcements, I would like to introduce Lisa Smiley, Director of Enterprise OEM Development at Walker & Associates. Lisa will introduce the moderator of today's panel, and then we'll take it from there. So please join me in a warm FCA welcome for Lisa Smiley.
Thank you, Tina, and good afternoon. I am honored to be here today and looking forward to hearing from these panelists and their perspectives on the cyber challenges and how they meet them. I'm especially pleased to introduce Ms. Janice Haith, the moderator of this stellar panel. Ms. Haith retired from the federal service in 2017 after 34 years of working in various federal and DoD agencies and joined Oracle, where she is currently Strategic Client Director, Navy and Marine Corps. Ms. Haith was appointed as a member of the Senior Executive Service in August of 2004 and retired from the position of the United States Navy Chief Information Officer, CIO, Civilian Executive, to the Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Information Warfare. In this position, she was responsible for all CIO matters related to the U.S. Navy. Ms. Haith belongs to the Sustained Mentoring Program for the Black Engineer of the Year Award and mentors local high school students in science, technology, engineering, math, and career opportunities in public service. Ms. Haith is a board member on several organizations, including Intel Corporation, Worldwide Assurance for Employees of Public Agencies, the Cyber Council, National Security Alliance, and the Advisory Council for FCA's Washington, D.C. chapter. Thank you, Ms. Haith, for loaning us your time and your talents on this Women in Cyber Leadership panel here today. We look forward to a great discussion.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to asking some very tough but intuitive questions to our women panelists here. So first, I'd like to get started with some introductions. So to my left is Ms. Danielle Metz. Ms. Metz is the Deputy CIO for Information Enterprise. Yeah. Then we have Ms. Dominica, who goes by Lee Krugnelli. She's from SANS. And then we have Ms. Terry Roberts, who is the CEO and founder of Whitehawk, which is a cybersecurity exchange. Ladies, what I'd like to do first is get each of you to do a little bit more brief introduction of yourself. And I'd like for you to tell everybody in the audience something that's been rewarding or something that's been challenging or both for you as it relates to artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. We'll start with you, Danielle.
Okay.
She said, we don't have to touch on it.
Oh, fantastic. Hello, everyone. I'm Danielle Metz. As Jana says, I'm the Deputy CIO for Information Enterprise at the Office for DoD CIO. I've been in this role for almost a year, and I've been with DoD CIO for, can't believe this, 7, and before that I was with DISA for 6.5. But my background academically is international relations. I have a master's in that, and a political science and religion from the University of Georgia. So I think it's important to note that even though I have a bachelor's of art and didn't really know anything about the internet or cybersecurity, it wasn't even called cybersecurity when I was coming up through DISA, it was information assurance. It's important to have the ability to do intellectual curiosity, work with your engineers and all the wonderful disciplinarians that you have to always want to learn. And so because of that, I've been able to advance through DISA, through the DoD CIO, and absolutely love every minute of what I do within cybersecurity and delivering much needed capability to our warfighter. And I think the most challenging and rewarding activity I've done in the past 6.5 months, and I'm going to combine it because it really was. I think any great endeavor is going to be incredibly challenging, and if you're able to do it, it's going to be absolutely rewarding. So during the pandemic, my office was responsible for partnering with DISA and all the military services, combatant commands, joint staff, et cetera, to deliver a temporary collaboration solution, Microsoft Teams. We did this in less than 60 days. We were able to provision over 2.5 million DoD users. We did this, most of us working remote. A few of us had to come into the office, but the reason why we did this is so that the department could execute their mission safely and securely from anywhere. And so we blew the minds of everyone in terms of the fact that you don't have to be tethered to a physical workstation to do your work. And that was revolutionary, right? So in 2019, we never would have thought that. We always delivered capability and design capability for people to be inside the building. And then 2020 happened, and that just wasn't a thing. And so because of that, that allowed us to pivot a lot of our strategic delivery offerings to create a more enduring collaboration environment, and to do that in 9 months, which we were planning to do that in a 24-month period. So it's daunting, but rewarding when we did it. And I think that it just shows it's a testament to incredible teamwork, a willingness for people who understand mission, rolling up your sleeves, partnering across the board, and just getting it done.
Okay, so Lee?
Sure. My name is Dominica Lee Krugnelli. I have worked over the past 15 years in the field of digital forensics, starting out with kind of dead box forensics at the Office of Computer Investigations and Forensics at the State Department. That evolved kind of into more of a mobile research and digital forensics career where I supported law enforcement and the intel community. So I've been doing forensics and forensic research for quite a while now. I recently took a job with SANS full-time where we kind of streamline the course offerings that we deliver. So if you're familiar with SANS at all, we provide hands-on instruction in the fields of IT security, digital forensics and incident response, as well as deliver training to management level employees to immediately take back to their teams and put to use. So I co-author and teach a class on smartphone forensic analysis currently. That is probably one of the most interesting things that I've done in the last 15 years. As far as AI and machine learning type capabilities, one of the things that I know really is helpful to us in that field is the use of things like machine learning to help us detect kind of anomalies and differences in these vastly large amounts of data that we're starting to see. I deal mostly with mobile devices, so 500 gigs or less. I don't know every application that are on these devices. I haven't seen some of them before, but because a lot of our commercial tools and even some free tools that are being offered are starting to incorporate that machine learning capability into the tool set, we can quickly triage devices to figure out where we need to spend more of our time. So I find that to be very helpful in the field that I am in, and really helpful to investigators.
Wow, they're a tough act to follow. I'm going to start with the end. So AI. So the first class that I took was in graduate school. I was a naval intelligence officer, and I'm not going to give the year. And what I found fascinating was it was really about answering questions, right? It started out with the logic, if this, and if you're really good, and this, then what is the probability of this being the answer? And to an intelligence professional, that was like magic, right? If I call that, phase 1 level analytics or analysis. If I can get a system to do phase 1 and imagine phase 2, and then human beings just focus on phase 3, okay, think of the power of that. So fast forward to today, and what you have is the convergence of large data sets, because AI needs a lot of data, right? Infinite number of questions that we're trying to answer, whether it's government, industry, academia, whatever. And so bringing those together has been really fun. I was able to truly get into it when I was at the Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute, and we established the Emerging Technology Center. And again, it was about what's out there in the R&D world, what are the questions we're trying to answer in government, and how do we bring those together in a lab, test it out, prove it out, using commercial best-of-breed computing capabilities, and then transition it to government. So what's the greatest challenge? Transition. I tell you, my heart's broken from the number of amazing things that I've been involved in, whether it was, running a large scientific and technical intelligence organization in the Navy, or, running a center at Carnegie Mellon, or today with my company and doing, risk-based cybersecurity analytics, getting people to open their eyes to the realm of the possible, right? And getting them to just do a pilot and telling us, right, what are the questions they're trying to answer, what are the problems they're trying to solve, and allowing us to do a pilot. And again, I've tried this in government, academia, and industry, is the hardest challenge out there.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to start with you, Ms. Vance. So can you describe the activities that DoD is executing to enable artificial intelligence and machine learning in the enterprise environment, whether it's what I would call, from my Navy background, the shore, or the afloat type, the tactical? Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think our office is really responsible for providing that critical infrastructure in order to do the most exquisite things of machine learning and AI. And if you really think about it, if you don't have a robust, resilient network transport to move the data about, if you don't have quality curated data, whether that's through cloud computing, through having regional cloud data centers, moving to the cloud as opposed to having physical legacy type applications and really old ancient data centers, then you can't access the data the way that you need to be able to access it. And then also too, once you're in the cloud, that's not really the end state of why we're doing cloud adoption. Once you're in the cloud, what we really want you to be able to do is to natively build applications in the cloud. And that's what we're really trying to do within the DoD CIO, is shift the strategy from the DoD cloud strategy to software modernization, and really allowing for the software modernization principles and practices to take place, and think about software factories, the pipelines, et cetera. Once you have that foundation, then you can get to the machine learning and the AI. And so I think it's just really critical for us to not just kind of really only focus on AI, but there's a trilogy. It is data, software, and AI. And they have to be all treated the same, and we have to nurture them the same, and we have to think about them in the same manner. It's the digital ecosystem that we need to do. So the role that my office plays is ensuring that we have that critical infrastructure in place in order for the JAIC or for the other really smart engineers within the military services or the combatant commands or in our defense agencies field activities to really harness and take use of that. If they don't have the network, if they don't have a resilient network, if they don't have applications that are in cloud that they're able to build natively, then you can't do AI. You can't do the things that Terry was talking about. And I think, just piggybacking on the challenges that she articulated, I think we do a really good job in terms of experimenting and piloting. We're terrible when it comes to figuring out how we could do that at scale, sustain it, and then repeat. And I think that is just something that another part of our software modernization strategy is that recognizing that we holistically need to transform the business processes of the department. It's not just the technology, it's the people and the processes as well. And so it is a whole effort to work with not only those in the department, but our industry partners too, not to just focus on technology or maybe just focus on people, but it is a balancing act between people, processes, and technology. And if you focus on one without the other, we're going to fail. And we have a capstone of activities that show that if we only focus on the technology, or if we only focus on the people, or if we just did the processes without treating the others, we're getting nowhere. And I think that's the struggle, is that you're seeing in the past couple years a lot of great experimentation taking place as it relates to doing software factories and doing like bespoke type AI. But to be able to really put it at scale so that we can democratize that, that's really where our problem set is right now. And I think that's the focus that we're trying to do within the DoD CIO, and to build that advocacy across the board with the other OSD components, as well as the military services, recognizing that we already have exceptionalism, but how do you democratize that exceptionalism so that everyone can do it? And that's really what we're bringing to the table with DoD CIO.
Okay. So Terry and Lee, you both represent industry and academia to the point. What can you do, what can industry and academia do to help DoD CIO move the needle? What can you do, what can you bring to the table to help Danielle execute what she has to do?
Yes, please.
Well, you brought up some interesting points, like being able to move some of this operation to the cloud, and then you say that and people choke, right? I've worked in agencies before where we talked about doing some of the forensic analysis that we do and utilize the power of the cloud to do that, and people shut it down immediately. What we have to realize is that we're moving that direction. We need to move that direction, and to support some of the efforts that Danielle was talking about, we have to provide our employees, our people, with the right skills and knowledge to be able to do that. I think that's where SANS really plays an important part, because the courses are developed and taught by leaders in the industry. So they know at the pace that we're moving, they know what needs to be done, and an individual, when they leave that class, can kind of take all that information back to where they work and get started hands-on immediately. I just did a webcast the other day about doing DFIR, so digital forensics and incident response in the cloud, and so many people are still kind of very slow to adopt because they're worried about, we're so used to using, our legacy equipment with our lab setup. We want to process everything with our own off-network computers, right? Because that's what we've been taught. It's not because it's the best way. That's just how we've learned to do it, and we're really, really slow to move and adopt to different practices. It is where we're moving. So I think if we can get our practitioners on board, if we can arm them with the necessary skills in order to do this effectively, we're going to be that much better when it comes to security and prevention and remediation and the other things that we need to be doing.
Okay, Danielle, you're representing all of DoD. Are you ready?
I am. Lay it on me, Carrie.
So when I came into the military in the 1980s, and Intel community and DoD in particular, we owned the data and the computing power, right? We had the R&D within us, right? Well, guess what? It is completely flipped. So what I need DoD to truly understand and bring into their end-to-end planning, programming, budgeting, executing is, in the IT cyber arena, it starts in academia and industry. That's who owns innovation, right, today. And so what you want to do is start there, find out what the lay of the land, the state of the practice, the curriculum that's available, like everything, right? And then tailor that and integrate the best of that for your mission sets. Add the resilience, add the mission piece, right? But start with that. It would save so much time and money that we're spending today. And at the OSD level, being able to architect a migration plan, right? I remember in the 1990s at Defense Intelligence Agency, I was one of the folks that ran the establishment of JWIPS, so the TSSCI Global Communication System. And as a part of that, we were migrating off of proprietary capabilities, right? A lot of hardware-centric. And it took us, we had to map everything. It was about 250 entities, right? Functions, proprietary systems. And we had to do a map. And we had to do a map that would take us down to 30 more software-based capabilities that we could evolve and add to, right? Well, probably take that times 1,000, right, is really what we've been talking about doing across DoD, C4ISR, for lack of a better word, for the past 20 years. And my concern is we're spending a tremendous amount of money, but we don't have that comprehensive migration plan with different leads, do you see what I'm saying, across the board, and starting with academic and industry research, innovation capabilities.
Okay, so that kind of brings me to the next question, which is for all. And you all can, I'll start with you, Terry, first, okay? What policy changes do you believe are required across the government, but specifically in DLD, to help with the cyber hygiene while simultaneously enabling AI across the defense enterprise and the industrial base? That's part one. And part two is, do you think the government needs to relook their responsibilities with oversight, how they implement policy, the business practices when it comes to AI and machine learning, particularly as it relates to ethics as well?
Okay, I'm gonna actually do part two first. There was a great there's a great series of presentations from my former Carnegie Mellon University, which, as you know, is one of the top schools of computer science in the country and had the first school of machine learning in the world in the early 2000s. And everything that they focus on is a multidisciplinary approach to AI, where it includes design, right? What are you trying to achieve? And ethics, okay? And ethics is interesting. It's not always ethics the way you think it is. It's ethics from a perspective that you've got to have a multidisciplinary team that's developing the algorithms, because otherwise, okay, no offense, you have a bunch of white young guys who it's their perspective only, right? And they think differently from middle-aged guys, right? So you really need that multidisciplinary team brought together. And I love the word design, right? AI has to be designed. And so that is a key, and with ethics in mind, and ethics means that you're not predetermining or putting a bias in the outcome of the AI algorithm, right? You're really trying to get to the best discoverable truth. And so that best discoverable truth doesn't come from one perspective. So that's how I would approach that piece.
Okay. You want to give us some insight into what you think DLD and the government needs to do for policy changes?
My problem is my head can come at it from so many directions that I confuse myself. So with what's in the news today is primarily what is the policy and statute that the government should put in place vis-a-vis industry. So I'm going to take it from that perspective. In the cyber arena, 90+% of all companies and organizations don't have a sophisticated inside cyber team, don't have a sophisticated managed service provider. So if all we do is layer requirements, a regulatory framework on top of them, like NIST 800-171, right, Mount Everest, then all you're doing is bringing them to their knees, and we aren't becoming more resilient, which is what the goal is, right? So we have to do things that are incentivized, number one, and then with enablement, number two. And that's a whole separate discussion. But for instance, would anybody really wear, if we hadn't gone through what we've gone through, seatbelts if it wasn't the law, right? Or do drivers training, or follow, get an insurance policy, right? We wouldn't do it. So it's finding those discrete things that we can do. So for instance, if Terry were to come up with one rule that every company should put in place over a certain level, it's an online cybersecurity awareness training program. So like if SANS had an e-learning module, right, and with 5 other types, and that was made available to small businesses across the country at a very reasonable rate, that would reduce the events, because 70% of all cyber events start with an employee action, by 70%. So it's that kind of regulation or statute that is also enabling and empowering, not just adding burden.
Okay, thank you. Lee?
Well, I'm not going to sit up here and give my opinions on what I think the government should do as a non-government employee, but I do like your point, Terry, that you brought up about what can organizations like SANS provide. We do provide things like free training to small businesses, to schools, white papers, reading rooms. You could actually sit certain modules of the class to see if it's something that would help your organization with a particular need that you have, and to see that that particular area would actually empower or better your employees. So we do have those type of offerings. SANS is really good at giving back. When it comes to the design of the data that you want to get back from things like AI, I think that's a really great point that Terry brought up. In my field, we use it a lot for malware detection, anomaly detection, for incident response capabilities. It's dependent on the type of data we're feeding it, right? The responses back are only as good as the data set that we are feeding into these systems. So the more data we have, the better. I know that my job would be made much more difficult if I didn't have access to some of these large data sets that we can kind of filter through and take a look at some of these applications that are malicious in nature. So I think starting with good design is very important when it comes to AI machine learning.
So I absolutely agree with both women on the panel. I think part of the problem for the department is that we know that if we just focus in on AI, we know that we have a problem in terms of trying to secure and defining what that security means for the pipelines and for the models of AI. This is a new frontier for us, and so I think it'd be premature to say what kind of regulatory type things we need to have. We know that we're going to probably need new tooling, new processing, or processes. What that is, I think that's the journey that we're on. But what I will say is the department has a significant technical burden in terms of a lot of legacy, not only in our capabilities and tools, but our processes and how we do things and how we think about IT. Like most of the leadership, if you think about the C-suite within the DoD, they treat IT as if my phone's not working. Hey, CIO, can you help me with that? I'm not the help desk. That's not what I do. We bring scale of innovation to the community. That is what we do. How we go about it is the capabilities that you have for the network, for the cloud, for software modernization, the devices that move the data from point A to point B. That's the strategy that we bring to the table, not necessarily for me to help you with your password. And so it's really difficult for people who are in leadership positions that make decisions to fund for IT, to think as IT as a thing, not that it is pervasive in everything that we do. So a weapon system is IT. A business system is IT, but we fund IT separately, and I think that's been part of the problem that we're trying to get over, that technical debt of how we're going to modernize just the infrastructure to get to the things that we know that we need to do when we think about really cool stuff of AI. And I think the other thing too is that for the past 20 plus years, we've had a very network-centric way of how we look at security, with hardware at the perimeter, at the mid-tier and at the endpoint. And the way that we do our cybersecurity service providers is that we've been in the cloud for 10 plus years, we backhaul data from the cloud to on-premise type stuff to do the analytics. So your data is just going everywhere, and it's just incredibly expensive, and you're not harnessing the full power and the capabilities that the cloud offers. So there's a transformation that needs to take place with our CSSPs that we're working on, but that is a journey as well. So there is a confluence of a lot of different things that are coming to play. And I think by having the partnerships with industry, with academia, with DoD, and just as an educational outreach first, right? We have to change the mind. So anything that you're going to do that is transformational is with people, getting them comfortable with change. Change is going to happen. And then having really good strategy in terms of how you're going to get from where we are today, the resources it's going to take to actually make it realized. And I think those are the stumbling blocks that we've had fits and starts. But I think that with the DoD CIO and what we've done with cloud adoption and now pivoting and expanding to software modernization, you're starting to see the fruits of the labor kind of blossom. But by no means are we there yet, so I'm not resting on any sort of laurels. But I think we have a path. Now we just got to be able to have that persistence, dedication, to that mission to be able to execute, and having the close partnerships and collaboration across the board is how we're going to make that come to fruition.
All right, so we're here, we're women, and there's several men here, not to take them for granted.
Actually, I'm happy.
Oh, I know,
Yeah,
it's good, it's good. So what would any of you all say? We have a lot of young women here in the audience. What do you think that they need to do to position themselves to take your roles when it's time to succeed? When I retired, who took mine? You retired, you're going to retire, you're going to retire.
Yay.
What things do we, I know. What things do they need to do, whether it's from an academic perspective, whether it's doing a fellowship in industry, whether it's a position in DoD or another federal agency or whatever, do they need to do to advance themselves so they become the experts in cybersecurity of tomorrow? So any one of you can take that.
I'll go first.
You want to start?
Yeah, I'll go first. So I think the first step is don't limit yourself. So don't think just because you have a certain degree or a certain background that you can't do something. So I think just being able to release yourself from those negative narratives and expectations that you put upon yourself that then you project out to others, let it go. You can do this. If I can do it, you can do it. I think, so that's step one. Don't limit yourself. Step two is recognize what your strengths and weaknesses are. Understand your worth. You define your value, and you present yourself accordingly. So partner with other women. Ensure that you have a network of women first, and then you can expand that out to everyone. But you really need to have a core group of women that you're able to console with, cheerlead for and with, and be advocates of. And I think that's incredibly important. And then the last piece is that once you've identified what your strengths and weaknesses are, focus on your strengths. So if you're focusing on your strengths, know that you will always be in uncomfortable situations, and that's okay. And the fact that you want to be able to push that envelope so you continue to be uncomfortable, because that is the sweet spot of when you're going to learn, and you're going to constantly evolve and transform. And so you want to be able to make sure that you are surrounding yourself with incredibly intelligent people from different perspectives, different backgrounds, and that you're able to create an environment where you can have shared dialogue. You can push yourself and others to realize that you're not going to be right all the time, and that's okay. And nor are you going to be the smartest person in the room, and that is also okay. But allowing yourself to have that opportunity to have those safe exchanges with people is going to be really important, and that you are going to learn and never stop learning. So having that intellectual curiosity to be able to never be satisfied with what you know or what you've accomplished, but to keep going after it, I think it goes back to don't limit yourself. And so all those things I found have been very helpful for me in the progress that I made in my professional career. When I was 22, I didn't think I was going to be working for the Department of Defense. I didn't know what a chief information officer was, nor did I know anything about the internet. I just didn't. And now all those things, now that I'm 43, I know these things, and I love it. And I work with a really incredible staff. Many of them are here today, and I'm constantly learning from them, and they make me better at what I do so that I can be the leader that they need, so I can remove any impediments and roadblocks, set the conditions for them to be successful. And I think having a network and being able to recognize that you're not alone, you're going to have a team, and the way that you're able to present yourself to the team to bring the best out of yourself and others is incredibly important. So the last thing I would offer is ensuring that you have mentors, and not just one, many. Janice didn't know that she was my mentor. I watched her all the time when we were in meetings, and I mean, to watch an African-American woman in the DoD a decade ago with military brass and her hold her own was remarkable. I learned a lot from Janice from that, and these are learning moments, right? So either you can have a personal rapport, and now we do, but at the time I didn't. And so I was able to learn how she was able to conduct herself and gain the respect, and how she was able to take things on the chin, not let it get to her, and exude grace. And so I think that's just really important. So that's what it means being a woman in this type of environment, particularly in the DoD, especially in cybersecurity and IT. So with that,
Very insightful.
That was wonderful. I think that you made a lot of points that I also would like to stress. Just like Danielle, I didn't start this career, like I was a business major, so I had no business probably being in forensics, when I started out. But it was that curiosity that got me into forensics and kept me there. But also, never thinking that I knew everything. Because if I went into any of the past jobs that I had saying that I know it all, I can do everything that you expect me to do, I would have been lying. I learned new things every day. When I look at, my mobile device, do you guys have smartphones? I assume yes. Did you just upgrade to Android 12 or iOS 15? Probably, right? And as you're looking at your phone, you're like, wow, there's all these new features that come out, and I'm so excited to use, this new in focus feature that iOS put out, or the fact that I can change the location where I just took my last photo. I can change it from Baltimore to Hawaii if I want to. For me, I look at that as a way to learn more. Right? Because if my phone's capable of doing something, that means I need to go and investigate it. Many times I'm going to teach virtually in about 2 weeks in Paris. I know people are going to ask me questions that I do not know the answer to. But being willing to write it down.
You're in Paris.
No, I'm virtual in Paris. So I'll just be awake really early. But that happens all the time. So, by nature, I'm not an extrovert at all. So pushing yourself into situations that maybe you are a little bit hesitant to do actually really improves your capabilities. So, getting up in front of a classroom of, 25 to 50 people and then having them throw questions at me that I know I'm not going to be able to answer is actually, it sets me up for success, because I know that I want to be able to answer those questions. I want to be able to say, you know what, over lunch I was able to test out a few things and here's what I think. But of course that's not, it never ends. So I think just being willing to know or accept that you're not going to know the answer to everything going in, but being willing to try and, being inquisitive, wanting to get people the results that they need is really important. Also, the part about networking could not be more important. There are so many great mentors and colleagues that I've worked with that helped me get to where I am today. I mean, I wouldn't be there without them, male and female. But I do find that having women in your corner is also very important in this field, because I've gone into jobs in the past where maybe people, they doubted my credentials or my skill level because of what I look like, which isn't fair, right? And having those women in your corner actually was really beneficial because they could help you navigate some of those like tricky, slippery slopes that you maybe never experienced before, that you sometimes do experience in this particular industry. So networking, having great mentors, and just never wanting to stop learning has really helped me get to where I am today.
So, yes, and then two things. I don't say cybersecurity, I say cyber. So it is every business function, every non-physical work, every DoD mission that you're doing in a system of systems environment, right? That's a lot of cool career fields. We need lots of cyber lawyers. We need cyber policy people. We need cyber planners. We need cyber operations. We need cyber technical. We need cyber analysts. So there is no corner, right, to the potential opportunity in this field. It is both today and it is the future, right? So what like for instance with the lawyer, I'd say you'll never be out of work. You will be sought after. So whatever is your passion, whatever it is you're good at, look at what is the cyber spin of that, the digital age spin of that, and go that direction. And then the second thing is the courses, certifications that are available today that didn't exist 10 years ago that cyberize you, right? So I have women who have worked for me that were in marketing or that were in policy or anything, and then they come and they're in the company for a while and they get cyberized, and then they'll just get one certification, right? So maybe they work for us for a year, they get one certification and they're cyberized. And they can go on to anything, almost anywhere. So the beauty of this is the possibilities are endless.
Thank you. And actually, Danielle, thank you for your comment, because I've watched Danielle from when she was at DISA, and I was like, she's going to grow up to be an SES. Somewhere in the department soon, if she is. And Terry, I was in Danielle's seat with watching Terry years ago, so I understand. I haven't had the opportunity to work with Lee, but Terry, I followed the same footsteps. So women need to mentor each other, women need to network, and that's important. Not to disparage the men, but for women, being in a cyber leader role is important. So let me do this last question before we open it up. I'm dating myself, but how many of you know what the Jetsons are? Oh, damn. A lot of people don't.
You're young.
Yeah, really. So I always tell people, younger people, Gen Z, this is the age of the Jetsons and the Jetsons to be. So what do you all envision is the next thing past artificial intelligence, machine learning, autonomy? What do you envision to be the next emerging technology?
So I think of ubiquitous computing, and which includes quantum computing, but also includes more integration into the human body. So that computing and the human being truly meld, and hopefully the best of both. But let's face it, there are a lot of things that humans don't do well that computers do better, and there's a lot of, right, critical thinking that humans do that computers don't do so well. So it's, pick the mission, pick the objective, and then how to optimize the parts and pieces.
I have never really considered things past the Jetson age, but it's funny, I always look at it as an opportunity of something new to investigate. Someone asked me today, have you ever looked at a smart teddy bear or smart doll, like with Christmas coming up and your kids are asking for these toys, and then we have our other IoT type devices. I always look at this as a way to say, you know, if there is some kind of feature or something to make my life easier, what is being tracked by that feature? And you mentioned kind of human and computer melding. I mean, we already have some of that today, right? With, you know, some of our implant devices. They're computers. You know, there is always going to be an avenue for us to research, to get data from, and then how are we going to make that better with the access to that particular data that we have? So I always look at it as like an endless research project.
So I think right now, if you think about AI, it's very bespoke, niche, like a discrete problem set that you're going after. I think that by the time we get to the Jetsons, and I hope that there's more trees than there were when the Jetsons were around, because that always freaked me out when I was a child watching the Jetsons, is that you can have a convergence of AI models together, right? So you can take what would be almost seemingly unconnected type things and fuse them together. So you can have, like, for instance, modeling that's taking place like in New England with like peak season of fall and the leaves, and then you can have a model in terms of like the weather forecast, and then pair that with a modeling of you know, accurate transportation report, where like if leaves are on the railway, you get to be able to connect them. We can't do that today. And so just having the models of models, being able to converge on that, I think presents itself as something interesting and unique. And then I do agree with what Terry and Lee said, that I think we're near having computers being all in us, but that's still a very scary proposition. So I would like to stick with my answer of models and models.
Okay. All right, so I'd like to open this up now for questions from the audience. There's a microphone right here in the center. If you have a question for any one of our panelists, please stand up and state your name and direct your question to which one of the panelists.
Trying to get it off around my hearing. It's kind of stuck.
Sorry.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura, and I've had the opportunity to go between government and industry, and so I started my journey in '95 and spent 5 years with industry. And I absolutely agree with you, Terry. You know, industry and academia have to lead, but we are not even close to being able to do that. And a lot of it that I see, you know, we have ethics rules and regulations in place for a reason, and they need to be there. But a lot of times, and I know that, you know, I've had the fortune to work with Ms. Metz, and we've seen some of this, you know, how close can you get to working with industry? You know, what do you all see as low-hanging fruit that we can do to kind of move that barrier from being so hard fast to being one where we can really take advantage of what industry is doing?
Yeah, if I may. Great question, and close to my heart. I went to Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute to be that interlocutor between top-notch university, you know, R&D university, an FFRDC that had the clearances and the technology understanding and know-how, and then knowing the mission, right? So trusted by both, with the idea that I could scale innovation transition. We need more of that, and we need fewer. There were so many things we weren't allowed to do at the FFRDC, which honestly was like, why? In other words, those are OSD policies that could be changed. So to me, I know that Undersecretary Chu just came out with the functional capability, you know, innovation areas, for lack of a better word. I'm not using the right term. To me, you would have one of those centers, do you see what I'm saying, for each of those functional areas. They would have free flow to the labs, right, to the national labs, because they are trusted by both. They can be a place where innovation can really happen, but you have to open it up to industry. That industry has open entree, that you have OTAs going all the time. And guess what? I participated in a bunch of those, and then they didn't end up picking a winner. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be a real, repeatable business model, consistent approach, happy to be a part of the development, so that you can scale that continuous insight of commercial and university innovation, and then the department can select from that. So you do that at scale.
Yeah, I agree with Terry on that. And I think the other thing that we struggle with is the fact that, most of the times that we do OTAs, it's really just focused on the technology, and we fail to really expand the aperture to do it for the current processes that we have in place and what those policies and processes need to change in order to do that new thing that we just tested out, right? And so that's what, and then the other thing that we fail to do too is the people component of it, the consumers of whatever that great technology is, and then how we're going to secure it. So there's a lot of transformation that needs to take place and all that, and I think that's been the struggle that I've seen being on the department side of things, is that industry comes, they have like a really cool gadget that they want to do, and they're like, oh, if you do this is going to save everything. It's not, we know that. But then how do we expand it so that we're also covering down on the people and processes piece? And I think that we need to recenter how we are balancing that. And I do like the idea of what this Undersecretary for RE did with like a mantra of innovation. I think all the OSD components could probably do that for their functional area, and then that could be the starting point of having a better, more fine-tuned conversation, not only with industry, but with academia as well.
Well, and I like them because they're broad.
Yes.
Because it can't be a requirement.
Correct.
It has to be anything within this arena.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We have time for one more question. Why don't we let you go, and we'll kind of do a speed round answer here.
Okay. Hi, my name is Frank Kidd. I'm a computer science teacher from Houma, Louisiana. Yay. And I just want to say thank you, ladies. I'm going to use that picture to motivate my students, because I'm always telling my students that having brown skin or being a woman won't mean the same thing in the workforce 20 years from now as it meant 20 years ago. And Ms. Haidt, I retired as a GS-15 IT specialist from the Department of Labor. I'm also going to tell them that you could have been my supervisor.
Thank you for teaching those students. You're educating our future, so we appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing. And thank you, ladies, for what you did today for us.
Thank you.
Ms. Haidt, thank you for putting together this panel. Thank you all for sharing your time and your expertise, and we certainly appreciate your spending part of today with us, so thank you. Thank you to all of our audience for being here. I have a couple wrap-up comments. One is to let you know that as a token of our appreciation, on behalf of FCA, for each of our panelists, we're going to be making a donation to the organization Girls Who Code. So if you haven't heard of it, that's a nonprofit that aims to support and increase the number of women in computer science. So what better organization to be supporting than a donation in your names? So with that, we're going to have Susan and Nancy and Gretchen, these three here. I think we're going to position one of them over here, and then maybe two in the back. Just look for their Susan, Nancy, and Gretchen. Why don't you two stand up? They have the all-important drink tickets for the reception. So the iPads are on. Shantae is in the back. If Shantae could wave. Shantae is in the back. She's by the iPads. They'll be closing in 15 minutes. So if you want to get scanned for continuing education, please go see Shantae in the back. She'll help you get scanned. See Gretchen, Nancy, or Susan for the drink tickets. We now have an hour break, and then we will see you all, everyone. The conversation is open to everyone, male and female, up in the Sharp Street lobby at 4 p.m. to continue this amazing conversation. Let's give one more round of applause. Thank you.